Welcome to Three Grown Girls, a podcast where we discuss issues that affect women as they navigate the 21st century. This is a space created by Jamaican women to discuss topics of importance to us. We're talking relationships, money, career, and the varied things in between. Through it all, we encourage women to live their best lives. As women in our 40s and with the benefit of hindsight and experience, we nurture this space, a safe space to explore the lived experiences not only of ourselves, but also of others. Our co hosts include yours truly, Petre, the cool, calm, and collected voice of reason, or so I'm told, the candid and spirited Caroline, who says what others are thinking but won't say, and Sarah, who always holds us down with an analytical and spiritual viewpoint. Thank you for joining. We are happy you are here. Now, don't forget to share this podcast with a friend and stay tuned.
Welcome back to another interesting podcast brought to you by your favorite grown girls, Sarah Petre and yours truly, Carolyn. Say hi, ladies.
Big up the big
Hi,
woman, them.
hi, ladies, and hi, listeners.
Yay. Today, we want to talk to you about the dreaded D word. Yes, divorce. As we continue to pack issues that affect women, the topic of divorce cannot be ignored. We want to take a closer look at divorce through the lens of two women who have lived to tell the tale. Rene, who is currently divorced, and Deanna, who is still going through the process of a divorce. We have all heard the statistics that 50% of all marriages end in divorce. This statistics is actually based on projection from the 1970s when divorce were actually spiking. But does this hold true today? Apparently it does because a 2020 study done by UN Women found that around the world, marriages continue to decline and single and co-parenting living is actually on the rise. Interestingly, too, studies done in North America between 2000 and 2016 identified that women are filers in nearly 70% of divorces. Yes, women are actually the ones initiating divorce. What is also interesting is that since 1990, the divorce rate in our demographic, yes, ladies over 40, has actually doubled. In fact,
Wow.
research has predicted that gray divorce, which is what they're calling us gray people, will
Mhm.
actually triple by 2030. But but what does all the statistics mean for our lived experiences? No one goes in thinking, if I don't like it, I'm going to get a divorce. However, we can all agree that divorce is something that happens and it is sometimes a necessary evil. As we get ready to examine the impact of divorce on women's lives, let us welcome our very first podcast
Mm.
guest.
Welcome, ladies.
Yay! Hi, ladies.
We are honored to have Deanna and
Yes.
Renee join us this evening.
Yes.
Amen. Thanks for
So
having
let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just a little background about who you are.
I kick off first. So, my name is Deanna Johnson, and I am a mother of two girls, 13 and 8, and I have a son who's 21. I um, pretty much took him under my wing. I used to foster, now he's officially mine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have a business called Braids Made Perfect, where I specialize in protective hairstyles. But through my journey, I've added a spin to it by I call it hair therapy. So I use my story to empower and encourage other women while doing their hair.
Oh,
Nice.
you. Mm-hmm.
And I made the accent fool you, okay? Diana born in a Canada, but she's Jamaican parentage, so she know the patois, okay? She
yeah.
know it.
It's a little bit too country though. So.
I said I want the deep.
Okay. So, Nice to meet you, Deanna.
Mhm.
I'm Rene Rankin. Who is Rene? She's a mother of two. Well, I recently became a mother of two. So I have a 13-year-old daughter, Hannah Leah, and then a now 3-month-old son, Wendell Azariah.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yes, very powerful name for a very powerful
Yes.
prophet. Yes. And I'm a wellness coach, and I'm also trained in educational psychology.
Mhm.
So that's just basic, Renee. I'm a Christian for all my life, and I just enjoy. I'm passionate about, helping others, and I love planning,
Wow.
especially. So I'm a wedding coordinator as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Yeah.
Anybody out there getting married, need a coordinator? We have one right here for you.
Yeah. Right. So thank you, ladies, for that introduction. And we just want to put our foot in it now. I think we know that people get married for, any number of reasons. So, in the way of context setting, we would love it if you could share with us your own reasons or reason for getting married in the first place.
All right, so I'll take this one. Why did I get married initially? Um, it's the right thing to do. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm a Christian, right? Born and bred in a Church of God Seventh Day, and so
Lord,
marriage is
them one
something
day.
that, uh,
No, me said them one day wanna have to marry.
no, well,
No,
they're
tied together, two of them tied together.
I don't even know if it's a affy, but we you you want to be married
Mhm.
eventually.
Okay.
I don't think my church is one of those that force you into marriage. It happened, and I think for myself it was a natural progression.
Okay.
But also, if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get married when I got married, it would have been okay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So, why did I get married? One, because it's the right thing to do. I mean, you don't want to be engaged in um fornication. Let me
Yeah.
use the biblical terminology. But the world sees premarital sex. For today, that is not premarital sex if you're never gonna get married. Ha ha ha
Oh,
ha.
you hear that, Clara?
That's funny.
I
I
love
never
that.
heard. That makes
I
sense though.
love it.
A topic, right? It's premarital sex. Premarital sex. If you're not gonna get married, that's a topic for you guys. Um, and I dated my then husband for a number of years. And I remember my mom said to me, "You can't date him so long and not get married." So
Oh God.
I don't know. There's a lot more to say, but then I also want Deanna to share her why.
So why did I get married? It's very similar to Renee. I too am a believer, and I had just gotten saved, or I would say rededicated my life in 2007. Um, and before that, I was already sexually active, and in uh, had sexual relationships past with my boyfriends in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this one, I was trying to restrain myself. And for me, we
Been
were
there, girl. Been
fornicating.
there.
We were fornicating, and I was really trying to live for the Lord and, trying to do all the right things. And I knew that getting married was the right thing to do.
Mm.
And so we got married. Um, I did love him, but yes, we got married, and the main reason was because I wanted to make things right in God's eyes.
I heard you guys talk about it being the right thing to do and all of that, but not a lot of emphasis on I loved him and I wanted to be married to him. Did love play a big part, or was it just the right thing to do?
Um, Oh Lord Jesus. See, when you get to, there was love.
Yeah.
Yes, there was love. When you get to this phase, you wonder, but there was love.
Okay. I like that answer.
And I don't have. She answered for me.
So, so you guys got married, right? You were in love. You wanted to honor God with your life, and so you got married. So before, did you do any premarital counseling, or did you do any counseling while you were married?
So prior to getting married, no premarital counseling.
Mm-hmm.
We also didn't have, the way I got married was I pretty much eloped. And
Oh yes, I forgot that
you
story,
have,
Diana.
yeah, you have that Christian mom who's like, you know, my story is very interesting. I won't waste time and share too much of it, but I didn't really have a choice. My mom, yeah, I didn't do premarital counseling, and we also didn't have the right people walking with us. Like
Oh.
I didn't have proper discipleship. I'm still like a new believer, and I didn't have that. But then when we got married and things started to happen, we did try counseling, and it didn't work.
Ooh.
Mm.
Hmm
How about you, Renee?
Yes, I had premarital counseling, and yeah. What was the question? Sorry.
No, just
Matrix,
asking if
matrix.
you had premarital counseling,
Yes.
and or if you engage in couples counseling when you started having challenges or before or anything like that.
Okay. No. Yes. So premarital counseling, but no post-marital counseling, which is something I advocate for. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and there was no counseling during the um tumultuous time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I suggested it to my then husband, he flat out refused based on his notions of
Counseling.
um what you call it, couples counseling or
Yeah.
counseling in and of itself entails. So the premarital was mandatory, you know,
Right.
but that in between, which I now advocate for couples to engage in, irrespective of how grand you think your marriage is.
Mm-hmm.
It's important, it's
Yeah.
very important that you still going for a little counseling or a little therapy or whatever, especially when children come in the mix, it can change the dynamics of the relationship. So,
Right.
Yeah, because I know for some people, premarital counseling was, just very basic. Like if he puts the glass on the coffee table without a coaster, just kindly say, honey, use a coaster next time, right? But
or
a
even keep the
therapist once
culture.
said to me, yeah, a therapist once said to me that when she's doing premarital counseling, it's very deep. If you
hmm
look at your family history as to,
hmm
even if there are things that you're not displaying now, what did your father do? What did your grandfather do? Just to
hmm
pinpoint possible things that may still be in your bloodline or learned behavior that has not yet
hmm
manifested, to kind of
Right.
pinpoint it from there. And it kind of helps you to pinpoint,
hmm
possible red flags that may come up, you know what I mean? But like when I did it, it was very basic. And that coaster story that I just talked about, it didn't get any deeper than that. Right? But she said that she helped a lot of couples and like years later, they thank her for going that deep because it really helped them to pinpoint, red flags.
hmm hmm
Interesting. I know that sometimes when people decide to go to counseling, and I know especially for Jamaican men, they don't believe in counseling for the most part. So it's really
Yeah,
hard, and it's usually
it's
a
hard.
ditch effort to save the relationship. And that is usually when somebody has decided that they're already done. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's an important aspect when you're thinking about getting married and all of that.
Yeah, and
But
helping you to get pinpoint the red flags, that
right.
might come up. Yeah. And
And
how to
talking
deal with
about
them. Not only
right,
pinpoint them, but how to deal with them. Yeah.
for sure. And talking about red flags, right? When we talk about red flag, we're looking really at warning signs that indicate,
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy or manipulative behavior in a relationship. To the untrained eyes, and this is usually in hindsight, red flags are not always easy to pinpoint. So it's when you're getting out, you're like, oh, yes, these were some of the pointers that I should have paid attention to. In both your cases, were there any red flag before or after the marriage that would indicate that maybe, this marriage is a mistake? Did any of you have any red flag in hindsight that you should have listened to or followed?
In hindsight, yes. Um, for me, communication is key. Key in any relationship, whether it be God and man,
Mm-hmm.
just friends, family, etc. Communication is key. I'm a talker, and my ex-husband is not. And I don't know. I forced the issue to think we could work irrespective of that dynamic being so far apart. He's introverted, I'm extroverted. And we're almost on the end of the spectrum in either
Mm.
case. My counselor also indicated that our personality types are opposites. I'm sanguine, he's melancholy. And he indicated that, this kind of a relationship dynamic can be difficult. It can work, provided that the parties are dedicated to making it work. And, his non communicative personality
Yeah.
would not bypass, would not surpass whatever came up for us, which at the time I didn't even know we had an issue. So I was daintily feeling like it's working, you know, um, just wearing the mask, showing up,
Yeah.
smiling when,
And pushing
it
through.
wasn't all the way there, but me nah make nobody know saying no. No, not my marriage. No. Worst, my parents separated and, eventually got a divorce. So it have to work for me.
Uh-huh. That's
So,
interesting.
back to the red flag.
Yeah.
Those were red flags. And, in hindsight, had I just walk away, I would not be a divorcee.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Hmm. The red flags for me, they were there. Obviously, I didn't see them in the beginning because I was blinded by what I thought was love.
Mm.
And honestly, I have to say, I really, really did love him and cared for him. Um, but it was easy for me to tell people I loved them. I was very dependent on people and on men.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but the red flags were there, and a lot of it had to do with his relationship with other women. So friends, whenever he interacted with other women, especially through social media, sometimes the conversations were after hours, throughout the night.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, what kind of message is this? And it was more like, what do you call it? It wasn't sexual, but you could tell that it wasn't
Suggestive, yeah.
yeah, and so that was a red flag, and I said something about it, but because I was so passive, I didn't understand. I didn't know how to set boundaries.
Right.
So I would say something, but then he would do it again and again. And so from there, like in the beginning, it was social media and phone calls that he would have with women. And I would say, hey, could you like end it at this time because I don't think talking to a girl after 10 is appropriate. And he would also say that it's what was difficult with mine is that he is was a Christian, and so he would say that he's witnessing to the person or he's encouraging them. He was also a Christian DJ, so it was I'm looking for an artist, and so of course for me I'm like, okay, I want to, like, this is a good thing, this is for the kingdom, I don't want to interfere with that, but there needs to be boundaries put into place, and I didn't know how to do that. So there were many red flags,
Yeah.
and then those things turned into, it just
Yeah.
it went far left after that.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Gut is very important. We have to follow our gut instinct, and it's
Mm-hmm.
hardly ever wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
as you learn to set boundaries in relationships, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are going to be red flags. So the question always come up as to whether or not, are these red flags, are they dangerous, or
Mm-hmm.
is it going to affect my relationship? Is it something that I can live with versus red flags where you should run? And I think both of
Mm-hmm.
you are saying that your red flags were red flags that meant you should run or you should have run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ladies, you walked us through essentially the varied red flags that would have propped up, and obviously some things along the way would have overridden that internal voice in your head that's saying, this is a problem. What then ultimately led to your saying, well, no, this is definitely not going to work?
Well, it wasn't me who said not going to work. So me never
Hey,
even get that. I never got a say. It just
Oh.
was.
Mm.
Because, the red flags are there, but
Mhm.
the gentleman decided, it's not working. I didn't get a say. Didn't get a say.
Mhm.
Wow.
so it wasn't your straw, it was his straw.
What is trying? Okay.
Lady.
Oh. Oh.
Uh-uh. But yeah, he decided that we weren't, it's not working out. And the straw, you mentioned about a straw. For me,
Mhm.
my straw came when my trying was futile.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
that's that to accept that, it's not going to come back together. It's not going to come back together. So that was
Yeah.
the straw.
Mhm.
There was another straw, but hey, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the last straw was, you know, um, I think about, so we were married for 10 years,
Yeah.
and he committed adultery about 5 times, or
Mm.
the very first time there was proof, but all the other times it was that he never did it, or he manipulated, and there was no proof. um he a lot of lying. So
Yeah.
the fifth time, a lot of people told me it's time to move on, but for me it was talking to a friend who was dealing with something similar, and
Ooh.
she said, what message am I teaching my daughter? What message am I telling my kids by staying in this relationship? And
Mm.
that
That's deep.
was it for me. I was like,
Wow.
what message? Because I got a message from my mom, but my mom never told me, hey, go marry this man who's going to cheat on you and do all these things. But that's what I seen growing up. And
Yeah.
my mom
Mm-hmm.
stayed in her marriage because she didn't think that she could do it on her own. And so having that friend tell me that, and I'm looking at my daughters, and I remember going into the closet and just crying
Yeah.
because I wanted to, but I didn't know how. It was too scary. And so for so many years I held on, and I tried, but this time it was, what message am I telling my girls by staying
Mhm.
in this relationship when someone has already broke the marriage vow from day one and I chose to stay. But then they continue to do it. And because I don't
Right.
know how to set
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, and they are taking advantage of my kindness, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, but I'm not a good Christian if I don't fight for my marriage. But it was that message that made me say, no, this is it. I want the cycle to end
Yeah.
here. I don't want my
Mm-hmm.
girls to continue what I picked up from my mom and my mom picked up from her mom. So I
Right.
said, this is
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And the journey
Mhm.
started there. Yeah.
And can
So,
I just say,
okay, go
I
ahead,
like
Ren.
what Deanna has said about sending a message.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess because my daughter um, was younger, I never processed that. I never had a friend to say that message because, as I said, I was a recipient of separated parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, life went on. What I know I did was to try to shield her from this norm that would
Mm-hmm.
become
Mm-hmm.
her norm, um, and just try to overshadow her with love, you know? So I like that counsel that you got, Diana. And I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
something I can take away even as I continue to grow my daughter.
Yeah.
Um, to have her know it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I would have stayed, you know, I don't know how many times my husband cheated. There
Mm-hmm.
was one major incident, and just to when I said there was another straw, inside of my trying was when I saw him with someone else. Now we were separated, so it justified him doing it, but I was
Mm-hmm.
hurt by it because I am here waiting and hoping for our marriage to come back together.
To
Right.
reconcile, yeah.
Right. So in that process, and when you have individuals say praying, saying, "No, man, wait it out. Don't
Yeah.
come back
Mm-hmm.
yet." And you know, as Diana said, the church would want you to stay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes strive there, but you're waiting it out because of what others may think or what a
Right.
church may preach. Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
But
Okay.
I
some,
like
So,
that, Diana. It's a good takeaway for me.
yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? That waiting
so,
is something that we would have learned, as women. Because if from what I learned about divorce happening, and a lot of the divorce started in the 1970s when women realized that I don't have to stick it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to wait for things to get better. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to wait until he decides that he wants to stop cheating or start treating me better. So I think that's an important concept, in terms of learned behavior and how it
Mm-hmm.
manifests in our lives growing up, and why we think we always have to try, even when we know that we should not be trying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so you both came to this crossroads now of divorce. Either, Deanna, in your case, realizing that I need to set a better example for my kids, and this seemed like this is a never-ending issue. And
Mm-hmm.
Renee, you share that your husband would have been the one to really put the, divorce on the table. Um, how was that process? Coming to terms, picking up the pieces, figuring out what went wrong, contemplating the next step. How was that process? I'd probably call it your mourning period, maybe. What was that process like?
Ah, mm.
I like those
The
sides.
things you had to fight through in your head, now that we've decided we're gonna part ways, what's the process like?
Well, the process is not easy. As I would have intimated earlier, that I was waiting it out. So consider I got married, and a year into our marriage, I got pregnant, had the baby in our second year. But by this time, we were almost, I guess he was separated from me because we were not actively engaged in intimacy. And so
Mm-hmm.
by the time she's turning or has turned a year old, we literally are not sexually active. But as I said, I'm coming, I'm showing up at church, happy wife. Showing up at work, happy wife. And anybody who knows me knows I love sex. So no
Okay,
sex is
Sarah
not
friend.
yeah, yeah. But me I wait it out. Um, but oh gosh, this is we can't tell everything now.
Mhm.
But the mourning period. The mourning period really doesn't start until you're in the divorce because the divorce itself is another period. So you experience some level of mourning in the separation, but it depends on the severity of the separation. So in my case, we got separated. My daughter is a year old and we're separated and I'm not sure we're separated for how long the separation is lasting. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Because my separation was kind of tricky. We had an argument. I decided I'm staying by my mom, and he says you cannot come back into the house. So I'm inadvertently pushed out of the house. My keys are taken. Um, you know, uh, in a very chickeny way because he says he's changing the locks. So give me the keys so I can change the locks. He'll get them back. I never got back those keys.
Hmm.
So, so my separation began in a very unique way, and I'm trying to make it positive. And so we're separated, and I'm praying that I'll get back in the house. And it's just life is continuing for me in this process now because I have this young child,
Yeah.
and I have to shelter her, and so my picking up the pieces was just keep going, you know. Persons who know me, who work with me, didn't even know I was separated until they knew. Because I don't know, it was God. I can say now, God kept me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I really could have been broken down, and Sarah knows me. So
Mm.
she
Mm-hmm.
understand when I say God kept me, you know. Um, so for me, I just continued life,
Yeah.
hoping that it'll get better, you know.
Yeah.
Let me have Deanna talk so I can pick up my baby.
Pick up the baby.
Oh, whenever I'm asked this question, I get emotional. So bear with me if I cry.
Oh.
Just keeping it real. The process was hard. Um, I don't think people understand the depths of the level of pain when you do care about someone and you want the best and you've been fighting and then you come to terms with this is it. This isn't going to work. I lost myself. Um,
Mm.
my identity. I didn't know who I was because my identity was wrapped around him. I was a stay-at-home mom. Um, I was broken and
Mm.
I felt naked. I felt vulnerable. I felt like the head of my house, the protector, was gone.
Mhm.
So I felt like I was a target to men, and here I am having to be this woman
Yeah.
who always depended on people, and now I'm here having to take on this role of being independent, to protect my kids, to do everything that I need to do to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that they're well. And this
Yeah.
is all new to me. And then what it did to me was it revealed my childhood trauma. So
Oh.
I've learned that, you know, any kind of trauma, my therapist did say it is temporary PTSD, post traumatic
Mm.
stress disorder.
Right.
So I had moments where I would be in the room in my house, and now for the first time, my kids are gone on their visit with their father. My home was full. There was always kids there
Mm.
because I used to foster. There was
Mhm.
never a time that you could hear the pin drop. But for the first time, I'm in silence, and that silence forced me to hear my thoughts. And so the things
Mm.
that I started to hear was no one cares about you. No no one loves you. You tried so hard. Of course it's all lies, but I was sitting there and I was believing it. And so the church that I was going to I kind of ran away from being around Christians because they were kind and they were trying to be there for me, but um, it was all too much. It was all I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to grieve. I was also fostering, so I had like Children's Aid Society in my home, monitoring how I'm doing and if I'm able to care for the child that they've placed in my home while
Right.
watching my kids. So I'm losing my mind.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I really had moments where I felt like cutting myself. But I knew
Mm,
that was wrong. What I ended up doing was tattoos instead,
mm,
because people would look at me and they would see, oh my gosh, you're such a strong woman, you're such a strong Black woman. And
Yeah.
he even said that to me, but you're so strong. But I'm strong, and that's why every year I'm getting up, and having to start all over again. So it was, and I was dealing with a lot all at once. We didn't have a lot of money to begin with, so I started from the bottom up. I started my business, and it was all by the grace of God that He kept me in my right mind. I can't say, sometimes I would say that I went a little bit crazy, but it's a part of the process. Sometimes women are like, what is happening to me? I'm losing my mind. But like, I was dealing with paranoia. I was dealing with just all these things were triggering me, and it's because I had to deal with this loss, and then I also had to deal with everything that I never dealt with as a child, through the stuff that I dealt with as a teenager, just things that I just kept moving on, but I never addressed it. And
mm-hmm.
so this
Yeah.
was the thing that forced me to take a close look at myself in the mirror and say, who who are you? I didn't know
Yeah.
who I was. And so I now had to ask God to like redefine me, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know who I am. So it's the mourning process is messy. One minute you're laughing, the next minute you're crying. It's 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 very painful, and yeah, there's so much more I could say, but it's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That
And
that's
thanks
that's
for your vulnerability and thanks for everything that you're sharing, Diana. We really, really appreciate you coming to the table, and you as well, Renee.
yeah. I was just gonna say, just to add to what Diana was saying about it being messy. But I think, and everybody's story is so different, because I just got busy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
went back to school, and just was church, school, home with my daughter, you know, buy a house in the midst of it. Just, I just kept busy, but I feel Diana's pain also, because I masked mine.
Mm-hmm.
I cried at night, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want anybody to see the tears. And I dress up to church, and I just would. And I
Wow.
complained
Mm-hmm.
that nobody asked me, but I guess they didn't know what to ask, because I show up, and
Yes.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
functioning as a ladies president, and I'm functioning as family life and helping people to plan their weddings and just showing up,
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I dealt with my picking up
Right.
the pieces. That's how I dealt with my mourning. I just tried not to mourn. So, you
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
um, but I love that Diana, because I feel like I don't even know if I go through, and I don't have no superpowers. But when I listen to Diana, I'm thinking, could that have been me?
Yeah.
Probably was, but I just operated in a different sphere, so I didn't
Mhm.
end up at Bellevue. For
Right.
those who
Mm,
know, that's
Wow.
Jamaica's
Wow.
madhouse.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of vulnerability and understanding who we are after or during the process. It seemed like during that mourning process, there's also a learning period, learning who you are and who you can be without that person.
Listening to Deanna and Renee underscores, that a successful marriage actually begins before you say I do. It is
Agreed. Yeah.
important when you're thinking about getting married that, you're marrying for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Being aware of those red flags, ladies.
Yeah.
We usually see them, but we want to ignore them. So it's important to be aware of the red flags and deciding whether or not they are deal breakers.
Yeah.
And for persons who need it, seek counsel. Seek
Mm-hmm.
counsel from you know professionals and from people that you trust in your life.
Yeah.
There you have it, part one in a two-part series on navigating divorce. Join us next time for part two as we continue to take the journey with Renee and Deanna on their road to finding peace. Thank
Yes.
you, everyone, for listening. Bye.
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 Bye.